Someday you'll be able to meet with me in my office. And when that happens, you'll notice this icon sitting on the credenza. It shows a woman with wings and a gold halo. She wears a jeweled red robe. Her hair is elaborately styled and her crown matches the gems in her robe. She sits at a table with a cup on it. She holds a loaf of bread in her left hand, and her right hand makes a gesture of blessing. Around the edges of the icon are the words, "Wisdom of God, Sophia. Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed." This icon shows the figure described in the Wisdom of Solomon and also in the book of Proverbs. Her name is Lady Wisdom. The Greek word for wisdom is Sophia. That's where the English name comes from. And sometimes she's called Sophia. Proverbs says that God made wisdom at the beginning of God's work of creation, before the earth was made or water flowed or the mountains had been shaped. When God established the heavens and made the skies firm, wisdom was there as a master worker, assisting God in the creation of all that is. Michelangelo's fresco of the creation of Adam in the Sistine Chapel shows God the Father as a bearded old man, reaching out his right arm so he's almost but not quite touching Adam's finger. Most reproductions of that painting cut off God's left side. It's a huge painting on a ceiling. You got to crop it somewhere. When we look at the entire scene, we notice that God has his left arm around a female figure. That's Lady Wisdom. Michelangelo knew his Bible. Technically, Lady Wisdom is a hypostasis, a being distinct from God who cannot be separated from God. She expresses God's creative energy and power. She speaks truth and righteousness. She offers good advice and sound insight. Whoever finds wisdom finds life and obtains God's favor. And she's easy to find. Wisdom sits at the city gates, the meeting place where news is exchanged, business is done, farmers and travelers and merchants and pilgrims pass by. She's right there. All you have to do is seek her. Wisdom wants to be found. She appears to those worthy of her. She shows up right in their paths and meets them in every thought. In the book of Proverbs, she has built a house. She has mixed her wine, prepared her food, and set her table. Wisdom cries from the high places, "You that are simple, turn in here. Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Live and walk in the way of insight." The wise bridesmaids in Jesus' parable have responded to wisdom's invitation. Jesus' followers are the light of the world, and with Lady Wisdom's guidance, these bridesmaids are prepared for a long night at the wedding. They have brought extra oil. All the bridesmaids trim their lamps. Oil lamps are unusual today. I had to look up what that means. It means they have cut off the excess wicks so the flame is smaller and it burns longer. But the foolish bridesmaids, the ones who didn't seek Lady Wisdom, didn't bring any oil. Even with their lamps trimmed, they're going to run out of fuel. They have to leave the wedding to buy more oil, and of course, while they're out, the bridegroom arrives. The foolish bridesmaids miss their moment. Only the wise bridesmaids are the light of the world at the bridegroom's arrival. Parables often have multiple, often conflicting meanings. That's why these little stories continue to hold our attention 2,000 years after Jesus first told them. We will notice different things in a parable each time we hear it. What's standing out to me this time is the foolish bridesmaids missing out. The entire purpose of bridesmaids is to welcome the bridegroom when he arrives at the wedding. But the foolish bridesmaids aren't prepared. They cannot seize the moment when it appears. And they have lost their opportunity to greet the bridegroom. They won't get another chance to do it. That's it. The moment is past. It's over. Some doors will close and will never open again. Some opportunities are available for a while and then they're gone. You have to seize them while you can. We'd like to believe there's another chance tomorrow, that we can try again later, but life isn't always like that. As I've sat with this parable this week, I've heard Lady Wisdom asking, what do you need to do today, right now, while you still can? That's the question for all of us to take to prayer. Where is the bridegroom arriving today? Which moment has to be seized before it passes? We ask that question of Lady Wisdom, and we wait for her answer. In my prayer this week, I've heard a couple variations of that question. One big and momentous, the other small and right at home. What stood out to me as the election results were coming in is that our country is even more deeply polarized than we thought, certainly than I thought. Although Joe Biden and Kamala Harris clearly won, it was not the landslide many people were expecting. Anyone hoping for a decisive repudiation or affirmation of the last 4 years has been disappointed. About half the voters loathed the Trump administration and wanted it to end. About half the voters applaud the Trump administration and wanted more of the same. There are not many people in between those two poles. One headline I saw described a Cold War between red America and blue America. We are not going to get out of this quickly. As hard as the last few years have been, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Healing this country is going to take hard work for a long time. As I've prayed this week about what to do now, what has kept coming to my mind is a small group that began meeting on the Kreisau estate in eastern Germany in 1940, 1 year into the Second World War. It was a diverse group: lawyers, economists, political scientists, clergy, Protestants, Catholics, conservatives, socialists. They held conflicting opinions on just about everything, yet they were united by their love for their country and their hatred of Nazism. They believed it was possible that Germany would lose this war and Hitler would fall. And if that happened, Germany would have to rebuild itself. With great secrecy and caution, this Kreisau circle began to dream together about a new country. What could a post-Nazi Germany be like? How should its economy be structured? What kind of constitution would it need? How could religious freedom be guaranteed for all faiths? What moral and ethical values would help repair the damage to Germany's soul? As the bombs landed around them, as loved ones died in the fighting and the concentration camps churned on, the Kreisau Circle dared to look beyond the nightmare that Germany was. They dreamed of a future 10, 20, 50 years ahead, a future that might never come. And they asked, what do we need to do now to make that different future possible? That's a question I hear Lady Wisdom asking. There is a future for this country, 20, 50, 100 years from now, beyond the polarization of the present. A future that looks more like the kingdom of God. What do we need to do now to make a different future possible, even if we don't live to see it ourselves? Most of the Kreisau Circle did not survive the war, but several of them did. Kreisau members founded the Christian Democratic Union, a major German political party. They rebuilt the church. They were diplomats and government ministers and professors in post-war Germany. The future they dared to dream of became real. So what is that for us? What foundations do we need to lay today to build a different future years from now? That's the big momentous question. And there's a smaller one that's right at home. The other night, Melville got home from work at 6:30 and I had a meeting at 7. For once, I timed my cooking right. Dinner was ready as soon as he fed the cat and made his pot of tea. I was telling Melville about my day as we ate, just downloading what had happened. I had a lot to talk about. I was getting exercised about it. I was waving my fork around as I talked, and Melville interrupted, "Gia, you need to eat. You've got a meeting in 15 minutes and you've had 3 bites of dinner." He was right. He usually is. He sits at the feet of Lady Wisdom and absorbs her words. The opportunity I was about to miss was refilling my lamp. When we hear the Great Commandment, we usually focus on God's commands to love God and love our neighbor. We often gloss over God's command to love ourselves. Only through love of self can we love our neighbor. That's the other question I hear from Lady Wisdom. What do we need to do right now to love ourselves? This gorgeous weather is not going to last. Perhaps today we had better meet a friend at the park or go for a walk with a loved one before the weather turns and we can't do that anymore. Perhaps love of self means taking a break from the news to rest our minds and spirits after the election. The news will still be there in the morning. It doesn't need our constant attention. Perhaps love of self is taking time to eat real food before we have to rush off to the next thing. What do we need to do today to love ourselves? As we take those questions to prayer, Lady Wisdom is waiting to guide us. She's right there on High Street. She cries out from the steeple of St. John's. She says, "Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Live and walk in the way of insight." When we seek wisdom, we will find her, and she will lead us in the ways of righteousness and truth. I wonder if that cut off when the battery went. Oh no, it's still going. Good.